Yes, that intro was the best way to start this video, as last night, or just as I'm getting out of theaters a couple hours while I was watching a movie, it's been confirmed by the Wrap that Warner Brothers has agreed to the bid of Netflix to sell their studio over to the streaming service. There's a lot of questions that we have here, five burning ones that we're going to talk about here, but holy smokes, this was rumored as a potential deal, all flaring up today in the last couple days. A lot of stuff in the news about it that we'll talk about more, but this would be a major change in landscape and seeing once again one of the other premier studios being folded into another giant of the industry. Sit back though, because I have five burning questions now that Warner Brothers has agreed to Netflix's bid. Number one, what's the government going to do? Yes, I think the biggest question for a lot of people coming out of this is what is the Trump administration going to do now that Warner Brothers is seemingly going towards Netflix in terms of where they're looking to sell. It's been no secret of anyone even remotely close to the Trump administration that they had a preferred winner in this bid, and that was Paramount. Paramount, who new owner is Larry Ellison, a multi-hundred billionaire that is a key ally of the Trump administration, was definitely seen as the favorite of the government and who they wanted to win, even so much so that Trump himself has made comments about Paramount being the right place for Warner Brothers to sell. Now that we've had a lot of talk about antitrust laws and a lot of Republican leadership saying they're not going to allow this to go through, if we're going to see if their money is where the mouth is. This is a similar administration that let through the Disney Fox deal during their first time in office, during Trump's first term. Are they going to try and stop this one now? It's going to be tough to see. The big argument here is because, HBO Max and Netflix are two of the three or four biggest streaming services in the US, that this would break severe antitrust laws and anti-monopoly laws. And in some ways, I do agree with that. I think, having that much power into one individual's hand can lead to a lot of monopoly power. On the other hand, they were just looking to get this Warner Brothers studio, and in particular, their CNN news department and all of the background information for Warner Brothers to go into a studio that they felt were more backing their ideals in media. Netflix is not always the case there. So, yeah, that's the biggest question is, will the government approve this if this sale does get finalized and goes through, or will they stop it with antitrust laws? Will you force HBO Max to be sold off to a whole different company and Netflix can only get the movie studio portion of Warner Brothers? What will happen? Will they allow them to have the cable stations as well? So much to question here when it comes to the federal government's involvement. And again, they really want this to go to Paramount, and I'm willing to bet we're going to see a lot of political discussion about the fact that Netflix is the leading contender and the person that Warner Brothers chose originally and not Paramount. Number two, what does this mean for theatrical releases? This is always the biggest question for Netflix in general, is they're so anti-theatrical release that even when they have titles like Frankenstein, K-pop Demon Hunters, and Wake Up Dead Man this year, all having theatrical runs, all finding their way in and around the top 10 domestically some weekends, they don't put out wide releases very often, and they don't push for theatrical runs. Is Netflix buying Warner Brothers their way to set up a studio to push out theatrical releases? Is this potentially going to see less theatrical releases from Warner Brothers, and instead, after we get the contractually obligated Warner Brother movies set for theatrical release, are they going to then become more streaming service type style stuff like we've seen with Netflix over the years, with some of those titles as well? I mean, yes, your Oscar movies sometimes get put in theaters, but majority of Netflix movies, even the biggest Netflix movies themselves, like K-pop Demon Hunters, do not get theatrical release at all. Will this happen to Warner Brothers properties? Time will tell. Yeah, I tend to believe that Netflix is starting, even this year. I feel like some of their movies have been having a more theatrical footprint, and they've been in theaters a little bit longer. I think some of the bigger theater chains have restricted themselves from showing Netflix movies because the release window isn't as large. But I do think Netflix is intending to take Warner Brothers and use it as its theatrical head to release movies theatrically for the box office while maintaining their Netflix promise to movies and shows on their streaming service. I think this is a very good buy. I think once Netflix talks to like the DGA, SAG, Producers Guild of America, PGA, I think we're going to learn that Netflix isn't intending to flip Warner Brothers into just streaming service IP, but instead maybe spread out into the theatrical model that they started seeing some success with, including a major victory with K-pop Demon Hunters earlier this summer. Number 3, what's next for Paramount? Yes, Larry Ellison and crew, who just bought Paramount this year, now has to wonder what's going to go through next. They really wanted this purchase. They really want to bulk up Paramount in the IP game and turn it into one of the lead studios. And this felt like their big chance to do that. They were hoping they could buy news divisions with CNN, increase their cable network property with the Discovery channels, and just have another big studio filled with rich IPs to pair with themselves, as well as a boost of Paramount Plus and HBO Max together, because not many people get Paramount Plus outside us people who watch Big Brother and Survivor all the time. And I guess some of the shows like Landman, Landman's a very popular show that people like. What does this mean for them? Are they going to be looking at other studios to buy? What about something like Lionsgate? Could they get swallowed up by the Ellisons down the road here? Time will tell what this new Paramount studio is going to be like and their buying power. But I think with how aggressively they went after Warner Brothers, I don't see that stopping here with just Warner Brothers being lost. They're going to buy another studio. They're going to build themselves up more and more, in my opinion. Will they go after Sony, who has so much to do for it that maybe Sony can be willing to sell off its more film studio apartment? Who knows? But I think the Ellisons are still going to make moves over the next couple of years, including potentially still getting Warner Brothers if the Trump administration and the government backs them so much that it blocks Netflix's deal. It basically forces Warner Brothers to merge with Paramount or don't merge with anybody at all. Which, honestly, if you want to talk about antitrust, I think the government forcing a sale to only one consumer is about as antitrust as you can get, in my personal opinion. Number 4, what happens to DC? Yes, if this goes through, what happens to DC? Superman had a very lukewarm, positive response this year. Decent fan response, but we can't sit here and lie and say the box office was great. It did even worse than Man of Steel did, and that's post-inflation of a decade and a half. As well as things like Peacemaker not trending very well on Nielsen's charts, and other properties not really getting people excited in the new DC Gunverse itself. The Batman is finally getting some news with Scarlett Johansson's casting, as well as a cinematographer there, so that's looking like it may be coming in the future. But Matt Reeves has taken so long with this property, you have to wonder if Robert Pattinson and crew have lost a little faith in the general audience community. Will we see Netflix keep up with the current group of DC? Or will this reboot get rebooted so hard because, honestly, Gunn and company haven't gotten it off the ground very well at all. There's a lot of people who are apologists, but I think the superhero movie era is kind of moving on. And is DC a studio worth investing in? I don't know as much, and I definitely think Netflix will probably have to figure that out for themselves. Number 5. Did Netflix just win the streaming war? Yes, Netflix started this streaming war off in some ways in pre-COVID, pre-2020, by just owning the streaming world. And all these big companies said, we want our IP off of Netflix and we're going to make our own streaming services. Disney Plus, you have Hulu that's also Disney, you have Peacock for Universal, HBO Max for Warner Brothers, Paramount Plus, Amazon Prime streaming. All of these companies have took their IP off Netflix mostly and started their own streaming company. Until recently, as we've started seeing even things like HBO shows pop up on Netflix, Paramount shows showing up on Netflix, and now with Netflix potentially buying Warner Brothers, has it been officially declared that streaming wars are over and Netflix is the winner? That they're outlasting one of the major studios here and swallowing it up and proving once again that they were ahead of the game, they knew what they were doing, and none of these other studios were at all equipped to battle Netflix in this front. They all decided to take their IP to their home studios, and as much as the film critics and your snobby, people, and kind of include myself sometimes, and all the people you see on Twitter saying, nobody likes Netflix, Netflix is boom, Netflix is bad, blah, blah, blah. They have the viewership numbers. They have the subscriber numbers. And now they're buying a whole ass studio out from under them. They are the winners of the streaming war. And I think it's fairly certain you can say that the streaming wars are almost all but over, and your main winner is gonna be Netflix, especially if this deal goes through with them keeping HBO Max, because you're gonna have HBO going through there, like the Harry Potter series going through there. You're gonna be having all your classic Netflix series. Some of them do well, some of them maybe not do well. You're gonna probably have a lot more money put into HBO itself. House of the Dragon, things like that might get a production budget plus. Hopefully that means more practical and less CGI, because I think CGI does not look as good as sometimes the practical that you get there. But yeah, I think it's fair to say the streaming wars are over if this goes through, and Netflix has officially won. And as much as everybody wants to criticize what they're doing, it clearly has worked over a decade and a half, and it clearly has put them probably neck and neck with Disney in terms of who are the most powerful people in U.S. media and U.S. studio Hollywood lights. And we have to come to grips with that, and we have to give them their flowers, whether we like it or not. Netflix has done this. Netflix has proved all of us wrong. When they took all of their IP away, people thought Netflix would be over, and instead, they still came up on top, and they are so dominant that they're able to potentially buy one of the biggest studios in the U.S. out from under them, out from a billionaire bidding against them. Not just a billionaire, $245 billion net worth out from under them. I'll remember this night if this goes through as the night that Netflix basically pulled out their big arm and flexed on everybody out there and says, we know what we're doing, we win.